we get started, Brooks, like I
Yeah.
would love for you to give everyone in the room an introduction about yourself and a quick background.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Thanks, Harrison. First of all, man, it's great to see you and talk to you again, man. I think sometimes when people do these things, they kind of practice beforehand. But I just want to let everyone know we have not like we talked to set this up, and that was it. We both been so busy we didn't get a chance to meet till now. So you can't get any more real than that. So good to see you, man.
Yeah, man.
Welcome everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. I see some more Oakland peeps in here. I see Becca Tien from San Jose. Great to see everybody. Yeah, a little bit about me. I've been executive coach now for almost 3 years. I own a company called Merging Path Coaching. So I started doing that. Started coaching while I was the VP of Safety Operations. I'm at the cybersecurity company over in Emeryville. So I've built large, complex teams from 0 to 40 different people, and at the whole time, kind of really focusing on diversity and inclusion and bringing that into everything that I do. I teach a course on crucial conversations. I have a values alignment course for executive teams, and I teach a course on feedback. So feel free to give me some feedback when this is all over. You won't hurt my feelings. Before that, I was at Facebook. I was manager of operations there for the EP team for Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. So I got to run around the world with them and see some cool stuff. And then before that, I was a New Jersey State Trooper. So I did that for about 10 years. I was on the protection team for Governor Chris Christie and Governor John Corzine. And then before that, I was a 5th grade elementary school teacher. So interesting kind of career path and life path that led me out here to California. And I bring all of that stuff into my coaching, into the managing unconscious bias courses that I teach. Yeah, that's what I do. And I just love getting the chance to help people and watch people grow and come up through this tech industry. So yeah, thank you all for joining, and Harrison, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, and I would say just with all that, don't mess with Brooks, right? I mean, he's got quite a bit of experience
Oh,
on the.
there's a whole other side, my friend. There's a whole other side. Yeah, I don't let that side come out when I'm coaching. You know the interesting thing though, honestly, man, it's
Yeah,
cool because like even when I was a state trooper,
yeah,
and going into people's houses for domestic violence calls and
yeah,
drug driving arrests, a lot of the principles for how I coach and how I am with people, it
right.
applies in there too. And that's what I think makes the best police officers. And there's a lot of great men and women that I've served with who have the same mentality. So there's some really cool people that do that work. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really fascinating. And I would love to just understand, when folks come to you, what tend to be some of the biggest things that you think would up level their career?
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of executive coaches are purposely trying to land that contract with some CEO at this huge company um, to kind of really have their impact that way. My specialty is with people who are brand new to managing, never
Mm,
managed a team before. And all of a sudden, they went from being a really good individual contributor and now they got a team of 10 people that they got to take
yeah.
care of, and they're having trouble. So like that's my sweet spot. So what I deal with a lot is people like that. They're like, hey, I got some bad communication issues with some people on my team, and it's
Yeah.
it's not going right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of on the premise on how we met, right? And I think it was probably how long ago? It was about 6, 8 months,
Yeah,
maybe
it's
even longer
about
than
that. Yeah,
that.
I think we're all,
Time
yeah.
flies. This has been a
Yes.
very eventful couple of months, but I kind of came to Brooks through uh, something called Strive, which is around really up leveling folks in their professional careers. It's sort of like an executive MBA, if you will. And for one, it was just a very transformative and pivotal moment for me because if I look at sort of the learnings that I had after that program, and I look at some of the situations I had in hindsight, it would have been a totally different ballgame, right? Because like my journey, I started as an IC in Chicago. Our company got funded, I think, around $30 million, relocated to Palo Alto, and I was tasked to grow a team. And these are folks that traveled all the way, picked up their life, and moved to California. And you can just imagine how nerve-wracking that is. But like having that playbook would have been so much different. And I think like we would have been focusing on, you know, honestly, different objectives versus sort of like managing chaos. Right.
Yes.
I don't think managing necessarily has to be chaotic. Right. But I do think there are some pieces of that playbook that allow you to be more effective.
Oh,
Um, what
absolutely.
what are like some examples of things that, you know, could go down a wrong pathway, or maybe even give us an example of something that could totally go down the wrong pathway, but if you had the proper coaching, it would be a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, two things come to mind. First of all, designing an alliance with the people on your team. I had a great coaching call with one of my friends recently, who just started a new position at this huge tech company in San Francisco.
Hmm.
And both of the teams there's two teams, and they were kind of merging together. And then this
Yeah.
person, he was going to be the manager of both of those teams and having those merged together. And one thing that came up while we were talking, I was like, listen, you are joining their team.
Right.
They are not joining your team.
Right.
And that one kind of statement there, we spent a lot of time kind of talking about that. And you know, as managers, we think that that it's our, you know, the people are supposed to change what they're doing to respond to us, and it's not that way. So
Yeah.
the number one thing is really just behind kind of positioning yourself and your mindset when you come into these companies. You know, your number one job as a manager is not to manage your people and
Right.
produce productivity and efficiency. Your
Right.
number one job as a manager is actually to take care of your people and let them
Right.
know that you care about them. That's the number one spot. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some ways that people can kind of, I think like talking about this, there's like you mentioned something around building a connection.
Mm.
What are ways of like building a connection to foster what you mentioned before?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Vulnerability all day, every day, and kind of putting those things out in the open.
Yeah.
So, you know, one example of this is just kind of being comfortable talking about some of the things that you need to work on as a manager.
Right.
And there's been a lot of conversations around that, and then also like, hey, here's how I respond to some things, and here's some things that trigger me, and I'm working
Yeah.
on, and I want to see if you can work on that with me, and then giving the person to share those things with you. You know, a quick example, when I'm coaching people one on one, just the way my mind works, I have to like write down stuff because I'm like kind of all over the place. So I tell people, while you're talking, I'm going to be like looking over and down, and I'm writing notes. I'm not texting. I'm not emailing. This is all in service of you. But what happens if I don't tell people that, right? Those
Right.
subconscious things that happen, someone's
Right.
spilling their life to you, and you're like looking away, and like it causes some reaction in them. So vulnerability, openness, letting
Yep.
people know your weaknesses, and letting people know how you operate, and then asking them how they operate as well.
Yeah. And one more thing I probably add there is active listening.
Yeah.
Um, Active listening is super huge, and uh, I think one of the bigger techniques that I've been able, or even most simple techniques that I've been able to apply, um, was not only listening but also describing how I interpreted that information, right? And I think some of my design teams actually on the call, I've started doing that, and I've actually seen them start doing the same thing to me. So I think that's like a really simple way to start driving that connection. And I think too, there's I don't know, like I don't know if there's scientific evidence around it, but I will say it allows me to actually deliver better feedback
Oh,
to my
absolutely.
directs by doing that.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And for those of you who are not familiar with that concept of active listening, there's it's about being intentional with what you're doing when you're listening. So there's kind of three different levels to listening, and the first one is is being aware of what's happening to you. You know, how many times, for those of you, I'd love for some people to put in the chat function, how many of you have met someone for the first time, and as you're shaking their hand and they're telling you their name, name's gone? That happens to me. I was so bad with names before, right? You're
Yeah.
shaking someone's hand. The reason why that happens is because we are so concerned with what is happening to us. We're not listening to the other person. We're so like concerned with making sure we say our name the right way. We're like not
Right.
like I see other people here jumping in here in the chat here, right? So that's the first level. Being aware of what is happening to you. Are you embarrassed to ask a question you know you need to ask? Are you nervous to ask a question, right? Level two is about turning that level one off and being able to really listen deeply to what the person is saying, and really kind of connecting with them that way. So level two is simple to get to if you are good at turning off level one. And then finally, you got the third level, which is just the listening for everything that is happening in the environment, listening for the things that are being said and the things that are not being said. That's my favorite part of coaching is I'm actually listening for the things that you're not telling me, because there's information in there, right? Watching body language, watching how people respond, those little micro inflections in the face. All of that is like the third level and the highest level of listening. And it's not that we have to be in our level three all the time. You want to learn to jump between the three, but you want to be able to flex in any one of those areas.
Yeah, and so to that, like listening, when is the proper time? Like we hear a lot about active listening, and listening is sort of at the basis of coaching and growing. At what point do we respond or do we give feedback? Because I think like I found myself in situations where we can listen, and we've talked about this before. Like at what point does listening kind of go into this infinite loop? At what
Yeah.
point do we sort of process what we say and communicate back to them our feedback?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, generally speaking, it's a couple seconds longer than we think it is.
Okay.
We're so quick to jump right into the answer. I give this example.
Yeah.
I ran a protection team at my last job, and we had all these vehicles that we used to use, and all the keys were on my desk. So people would come
Mm.
up and they're like, "Hey Brooks, where's the keys to the Suburban?" And now is not the time to be like, where do you think the keys are? No, here's the keys, take it and go, right? But then there's other times as managers where we want to give people the chance to kind of talk and kind of vent out what they're saying, even if we have the answers. There's this, I find this a lot with people that I'm coaching. There's this perception that speed and efficiency is the most important thing when we're managing people, right? So Harrison, you as a manager, your job, you know UX, you're good at it, which is why you're promoted. The fastest way for you to get something done is to tell your people exactly what to do and how to do it, or you do it yourself, right? Those are the two fastest ways to do it, right? But when we do that, we miss out on the relationship piece. So relationship building, yeah, it takes a little bit more time, but that's where people can learn to solve the problems on their own. And that's
Right.
like a really important distinction. So if you look at the arc over time, you will actually have a faster and better result when you focus on the people and the relationship instead of the speed.
Yeah, and I think with that, one of the things that I'm taking away too is understanding the outcome of the situation,
Mhm.
right? There's a path for growth if you let folks and give them the opportunity to do those things themselves.
Yeah.
And I think for like as a manager, that's probably the path that we want to have, because if I'm going to tell someone the answer every single time, they're never going to grow, and we're going to keep going back and forth.
Mm.
Um,
Absolutely. And you're going to run out of time because you're going to
exactly.
have a team of 40 people one day, and you're not going to be able to tell every single person exactly what to do and how to do it.
Right, right. And I don't like to micromanage either. So I just don't think it's a sustainable approach to things.
Yeah. That's
Um, so I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. So we're in a really interesting time right now, right? We've been sort of thrusted into this remote work, and a lot of organizations, a lot of people, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of understanding like what the future of work looks like. I think there's and that could go in many ways, right? Where an organization is going, where your career path is headed, and potentially even just getting a job.
yeah.
um, what are some things that kind of come to mind for you as a coach, as we're going through this period of transition. And I would almost kind of say it's even paradigm shifting, right? Because this is
Yeah.
very unprecedented and it's accelerating things that there are tons of theories about and research around what it could be. We're here right now, right? And so I want to understand kind of like your perspective, and it could be around things that we should not do that tend to be happening, and what to look out for long term.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, man. Wow, so many different parts of that. So, a bunch of things come to mind. First off, a lot of people I'm speaking with and working with now who have lost their jobs, and actually opened up some time on my LinkedIn on my calendar for people who were dealing with isolation and lost their jobs, and they just kind of wanted to talk a little bit. And what we've been talking about and what I've learned is a lot of people are looking for stability in work in their company. So listen, let me, like, no offense to anyone who owns this and any who owns a company or anything, but listen, companies are not built to last. They are not built to last. They're not built to be stable. They're built to live on the edge, because living on the edge is where the companies find the most growth, right? So I mean, look what happened after 2 weeks. There's some companies that laid off like 300, 400 people, and they're not that big, right? That's proof that they're not built to be, they're built to live on the edge. And unfortunately, that the employees are the first ones who are going to get cut from this, right? So I was working with someone, and she was like, you know, I really want to find the next job I go to has got to be super stable. And I'm like, listen, stop trying to find stability in companies. What we need to do is build stability and build resiliency in our own lives, right? Because things are going to happen. Like this ain't the last time people are going to get cut from their jobs, right?
Right.
But if you have not spent time building stability and resiliency in your life, that's when you're going to have some trouble. So how can we
Yeah.
do that? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually really interesting. I've had on my call today, and then even I've in subsequent calls around folks that are looking for work. Um, there's this interesting theme around um, where we're at today
Mhm.
and where we would be if the market was healthy, right? Um, and well, what I'm kind of seeing is that today there's a lack of job opportunities. When the market is great, guess what? There's going to be a ton of more competition for that role.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you can account for in terms of stability is being able to invest in yourself, right? And one of the things with designers that I hear quite a bit is like my portfolio. Your portfolio isn't your story. It's actually how you keep applying yourself, right?
Yeah.
And what you have in your portfolio too is a bit of um, is sort of a self-reflection, right? Because you can keep going back and refining and then learning and then applying that. To me, that is one of those things where fundamentally and foundationally that will carry through with you, whether the
Always.
markets are hard or whether they're healthy. And that's again like your truth. And so
Mm.
if you choose not to do anything at all, guess what? You're not going to be the one that stands out when there's not that many companies hiring. And guess what? You're not going to stand out when companies are hiring, but yet there's a ton of more competition. So
Yeah.
I think that's some really excellent advice, and that would sort of be like my theme, and in advice giving to designers here and there, because I've been in this I've been in the situation where the markets were stormy before, and obviously right now this is very unprecedented. But the one thing that has really gotten me through, and it continues to, is continue to be learning,
Yeah.
applying that, and just seeing that transformation because of those things.
Yeah. I love that. That is all part of the mix right there. And I think the other side of that too is, yes, one, you have like building things for yourself, learning things, improving yourself, right? All that can be done. The second thing is being vulnerable enough to tell the people that you love that you need help. You know, we don't got to do all
Mm,
this by ourselves. And that's one thing that I have dealt with in a big part of my life, was thinking that I had to do everything on my own all the time, right? So
yeah,
if we have not spent time building stable relationships and resilient relationships before all this happened, we're going to have a tough time when this comes back, right? So to your point, like, learn, build, right? Don't just like, listen, I know it's tough. I know a lot of people are hurting right now, and we're not out of this yet. And I get it. And I feel for those people. Um, and at the same time, we can start to build each other up, right? So if we focus on our relationships and we raise our hand and tell people, hey, listen, I'm having a tough time and like I need some help. That's how
Yeah.
we build stability and resiliency. And when we come out of this, you know, I love seeing everybody spend so much time doing Zoom happy hours, and they're
Yeah.
calling friends they haven't talked to in years sometimes. And I love that. That is stability and resiliency. So
Yeah.
we're doing it now. Are you going to continue that when we come out of this? That is the question.
Yeah. I think that's excellent advice. And I almost kind of think in terms of some of my strongest relationships that I've built over the years have
Mhm.
been through that resiliency, like going through that struggle together.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna pivot this question again. So
Yeah.
we've been kind of talking about things from a lens of a manager.
Yeah.
Um, and now I kind of want to do with how can you manage yourself, right?
Yeah.
And again, just kind of want to relate it back to where the industry is today.
Mhm.
Um, when we start to see this unstableness, I think there's also opportunity. Um, and you mentioned something around really being authentic and say, and with a manager, obviously being like, hey, I'm going through a lot of tough times, right?
Yeah.
How can somebody manage their career? Let's say they want that promotion or they want to be challenged more. How would they go about having those conversations, right? Because one of the things that I found super valuable about the coaching that we've had is that there's so many different ways that these learnings can be and techniques can be applied to a number of different situations, right? I think
Yeah.
salary comes to mind. I mentioned promotion. I think there's something around creating like a job path for yourself. So how would we go about doing those types of things?
Yeah. 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 Being crystal clear with your expectations and making sure your manager is crystal clear on their expectations of you, right? Having those conversations right out the gate. Hey, listen, this, you know, one of the things that we're doing as managers, and this is showing up a lot even more now with the whole COVID-19 crisis, excuse me, we were really shitty at giving feedback before all this happened. And we are even worse at giving feedback now. Like
Uh,
if feedback was like a volume dial, that
yeah,
volume dial is like all the way off,
yeah,
because managers are, and rightfully so, we're concerned about hurting people's feelings, and people are
yeah.
dealing with anxiety right now, right?
Mm,
So what I've always done with all of the managers that I've worked with is have that conversation right up front. It's like, listen, uh, feedback to me is not going to hurt my feelings. There's nothing that you can say about my work that's going to make me feel demoralized, because I'm in control of how I feel, not you. So there actually is nothing that you can say that's going to make me feel any type of way. Like
right.
I feel the way I feel because of me, right? So when it comes to feedback, what I'm going to ask for you, if you see something that I'm doing wrong that needs to be corrected, can we have an agreement that you will tell me right away, and I can promise you that it's not going to hurt my feelings, right?
Mm,
It's such a simple thing to do, and then the manager's like, wow, I can tell Brooks about himself whenever I need to, right? And that's
right.
only going to help me grow from there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really simple thing that we can do for
Mm,
ourselves, is like making people feel comfortable in that, you know. And there's a lot behind the feelings around feedback. All bad feedback is all around feelings, right? When we don't want to feel that. So I think it's a mindset shift. You know, when people say like, oh, I'm really intimidated by him, I'm really intimidated by her, it's like, she or he is not doing anything to intimidate you. Like, you're feeling intimidated because that's what you are choosing to do to yourself, right? So when we take that power away from people and we own it, it just makes us like, we can apply that to so many areas of our life, including our career growth, right? So like,
right.
let's stop pointing the finger and the blame on everyone else. Like, be clear with what you want. Be clear with the people who are in your life who can affect what you want, and like, let people know, like, listen, tell me if
Right.
something's off and let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Let me
I
know.
would,
looks like we have a couple comments here. It looks like Katie said, yeah, I love inviting people to provide feedback. It helps build trust and transparency right out the gate. Katie, imagine Katie, if we do that every time we go
Right.
to a new job or every time we have a new
Yeah.
manager. Like that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a muscle that, in practice, it's going to get easier and easier every single time.
Yeah.
I think like once you sort of get past that first path, or that first situation, you'll feel so much relief because it's going to be eye opening to you, right?
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity to practice this not only at work, you can practice it with your friends, your family, with your significant other.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Um,
listen, let me tell you a little bit of secret about
yeah,
coaching, management problems, like not getting along with people at work. And like
yeah,
every single complex, complicated, crazy situation you can think of at work comes down to like one or two sentences. I don't care what it is. I know nothing about UX design. If you put me on your team, like LinkedIn would like the K in LinkedIn would like break off and fall on the, I would mess some crazy shit up, right? I know nothing about UX
yeah,
design, but I guarantee you I can manage the hell out of your team.
right.
Because like it's about like focusing on what that one problem is, right?
Yeah, but
And the
Brooks,
same thing goes.
you're not taking my job. Just understand that too.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's all you, my friend. You listen. You don't want me. You don't want me doing UX. That's for sure. But like everything comes down to that one little like one or
Yeah.
two sentences, right? So the
Hmm.
same thing applies to our personal relationships
Right.
with our spouses, with our significant others, with our friends. It all comes down to a simple one or two sentences. Yeah.
Yeah, and just one more thing to kind of add on there. Um, you know, one of the things that I think is very important to understand, especially in this moment, we've been accelerated into this world where we are now in people's bedrooms, in their living rooms, with their kids, with their other housemates that are
Yeah.
also working. And I think like what it's actually starting to show, and it's accelerating this belief that there's actually no such thing as like work life and home life. Like they are integrated,
Yeah.
and the way that you bring yourself to work is in effect, a sum of everything around you. And so I think it's one of those things that I hope we continue to do, because that draws us closer together, right?
Yeah.
And I think if anything, it's going to facilitate having those conversations, being able to connect with people, and people being more forward in terms of where they're at. Because like I know, like even from a body language perspective, days that my team aren't really feeling it. And
Yeah.
I think like we've been doing quite a bit of work. And I think we touched on this before the call. Like this is not the time to try to be more efficient in what we're doing, because there's a lot of heaviness that we have to deal with at the same time. Like we need to be respectful of people's mental health, and the best way to do that is to check in.
Yes. Absolutely. That is it. It is all. It was always about that.
Yeah,
And it's even more about that now. And I think we're starting to realize that as managers, like, listen, stop trying to get more out of your people right now.
right.
I'm sorry. Like, a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, but that's fine. That's how I feel. We need to take care of each other and make sure we can get through this time right now. Like, listen, everyone's got their own stuff going on. Harrison, let me ask you this, and
Yeah.
I want everyone who's on here to answer in the chat function here too. It's been about a month since we've had this lockdown here in the Bay
Yeah.
Area. Uh, when's the last time you took a PTO day?
I have not taken one at all.
Uh, looking for some responses here. For those of you out there, when's the last time you took a PTO day? I see Leanne in there. I see Rebecca Tien. I see Eliana.
No one.
Yeah. Vanessa's nope. Vanessa's like, what's PTO? Look at
Not even
this.
weekends.
Look at this. Yes.
What?
See, I'm actually not surprised. Everyone who's in here, if everyone would just throw it in there, I want to hear
Wow.
from everybody, from Katie, from Lior. Who else is here? Brian Waxon, Dennis Lee. What do we got?
December 17th, 2019. That
Right
was
there.
last year.
Exactly. He's on a roll. She's trying to roll into. She's probably already in management. That's why.
Wow.
Look at this. So Katie had planned to take off on the 4th for a wedding. Wedding was canceled. Right. So like, look at
Mm,
this. This is
wow.
pretty amazing to me, because here we are, completely stressed out,
Yeah.
overworked, and we're pushing harder. Our managers are pushing us harder than ever before because we're remote, because there's this sentiment that we're not getting work done. And look what's
Yeah.
happening. There's not only are people not taking PTO, but they're working 7 days a week because home and work is now blended together.
Right.
So what we need to do, like, as manager, if you're on this chat and you're managing right now, I would recommend telling your team next week, I want everybody to take a day off next week. I don't care what day it is, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Everyone's got to take one day off, because like, we need that break. We're pushing each other too hard right now, and what we need to
Right.
do is get through this time and get through this time together, and then we're going to need to heal, because a lot of
Right.
people are hurting and going through grief right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that we may be in the thick of it right now, but it's going to take some time before we get back to any sense of what we considered normal, right?
Yeah.
I think if you have that perspective of, hey, like, this isn't always going to be a transition,
Yeah.
right? This is actually probably going to be a norm of some sort, right? Like, in California, at least at LinkedIn, I think we're moving into week 6. And so this isn't like a temporary thing at week 6, right? Like, we're starting to adjust how we work, and we should understand and be flexible, but we need to make space for ourselves, to be able to just, for one, take a break.
Yeah.
But I think also too, I think it's a good opportunity to have some sort of reflection in terms of how you're managing your life at this point in time.
Absolutely. How you're managing your life. And if you're a manager, how you're managing your people. So
Yeah,
us as employees need to take that step and like, take a day off and
yeah,
relax. And managers need to create that for their employees as well.
right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we're at around like 2:40. I'd love it. I think I see two questions in the bank. It'd be great if you all could start adding a little bit more. Once the clock hits around 2:45, we're going to open the floor for questions. All right.
Awesome. Yeah. Looking forward to everyone's questions. This will be fun. Look at Lenore. And Lenore's like, "Amen. My boss used to do that too. Uh, they don't work on the weekends. I love it. I only work on the work evenings. If I had bad concentration during the day, I love it. And listen, we all have to. One of the best things about my job when I was a VP at the last company, I would always say the best thing about my job is that I can do some personal stuff on my work time.
Yeah.
And the worst part about my job was that I had to do some work on my personal,
Personal time.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I blended it together, and that's what I feel, for me anyway, is given the most healthiest lifestyle for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so on that piece for the last question, um, you at the beginning of the show, you talked about just the different parts of your career path. It'd be great if you could maybe dive in a little bit deeper in some of the more transformational moments or pivotal moments in your career, because I think it's pretty fascinating that you've gone from teaching students to working as a state trooper, to then working in big tech, to then managing a large enterprise security team, right? So take a little dive into that, because I think there might be some great lessons in that.
Yeah. So the thing that comes to mind first was, when I was a state trooper, I applied for the Office of Public Information, and I was going to be the police officer. You see on TV, something happens and there's some cop that's talking about the details. I was going to do that. It was 15 minutes from my house. I was going to get a dog Monday to Friday. Like, I was set, right? And I didn't get that job. And I was super disappointed. And there's a longer story behind this too that I'll share with some people. Just in the interest of time, we can't get into it, but
Yeah,
super disappointed, man. It broke my heart, and I wanted that job like more than anything else. And I was disappointed and kind of down on myself. And then I continued work in executive protection. I was with Chris Christie at this event in Idaho at the Sun Valley Conference, and that's where I met Mark Zuckerberg, and I met my friend Guy Himmelblau, who I'm still friends with. And Guy was like, "Hey man, we like how you work. We're looking for someone to join our team. You want to come over?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm a state trooper. Yo, I'm not leaving New Jersey, man. What are you talking about?" So we kept in touch, and he's like, "Listen, come out, and we'll do an interview. If you don't like it, say no." So I was like, "Okay, get a free trip to California."
Yeah.
Came out, interviewed, fell in love with Facebook. It's like it was like out of a movie where they opened the door and it was like angels were singing on the campus. I was like, "Yo, so after the interview was 8 hours.
Wow.
And I sat in my car for 2 hours in the rental, and I'm like, "Yo, I think I'm moving to California," right? So the crazy thing, if I had gotten that job with the Office of Public Information, I would not have been with Chris Christie in Idaho. I would not have met Mark Zuckerberg and my friend Guy. I would not have come out here, and I literally would not be sitting in this chair talking to you right now. You'd be interviewing some other coach or something right now. Actually, maybe not, because we would have never even met. We wouldn't even through Strive, right? So when I think about career changes and when we're let go from our jobs, when we're fired from our jobs, when we've invested all of our money in something and that investment blows up in our face, there's a reason behind this. And my hope and my wish for all of you that are on this call and for everybody that I work with is that we can look back and connect those dots. So I apply that to my career and all my career changes. It's like, hey, listen, I love what I do. I'm one of the happiest people that I know because of the stability and resiliency I've built around myself and friends and family and work and lifestyle. But when things don't work out and things come crashing down, I stay focused on that next thing. And that's what I think we need to do now. So listen, I'm sorry a lot of us have lost our jobs now, but like there's something else coming up for you. So focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a crazy story that is very similar to that. So I'm going to go back to when I was at Iowa. So after I graduated from Iowa, I lived there for about 3 years, had a web design job. And by the third year, I was like, man, I got to get out of here because there's just so much more out there, right? And I just want to be in a place that can support my career. So at that time, I was doing a lot of like web design coding work, and I got an email from Google, right? And I was like, wow, Google, like front end website developer for YouTube. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. And so, when Google kind of hits you up, they sort of give you the lay of the land in terms of what you'll be tested on. And it was like around algorithms and all these types of things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. And the industry had transformed quite a bit. And frankly, I was just very far behind. But I tried to stick it out. Me and the recruiter got on the call, and then eventually got to a technical interview, and I just completely bombed the interview. Kind of the next week, one of my former dorm roommates who had lived in Chicago at the time was like, "Hey, there's a company that's hiring in Chicago I work for that's doing a UX role. Why don't you come through? Why don't you join us?" And I'm like, "All right, perfect. I can get my foot in the door, learn more about UX." 10 months later, like I'd mentioned before, we got that $30 million in funding and moved to Palo Alto. I shit you not, a year after that, we were having a happy hour at a bar in Mountain View, and that recruiter from Google was sitting across from us.
No way, man. Damn. Yeah. There it is.
So it's one of those things where, things may not manifest in this like ideal way, but you should keep at it.
Yes.
Because, eventually that path will lead there if you have enough focus. And I would probably say the same too. It's like, the same thing applies to the work that you're doing, right? Like there might be an idealistic vision. You might be working on a project that has, all the perfect circumstances and funding. But the real world's not like that. You're going to have to improvise, right? You may
Absolutely.
be in a situation where your resources are constrained. And so you need to be willing and able and to pivot and have an open mind.
Yes, that open mind is, it's all about that. It's all about that. So, you think you know what you want in life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's not the thing. So we need
Yeah.
to we need to stop fantasizing
Yeah.
and focusing on getting exactly what it is that we want. And it's about the process, it's about the push, it's about the learning that we're doing, the stuff, that the resiliency that we're building, the stability that we're building as we're going after those dreams. But that dream that we're fighting for, it changes. I mean, how many people here, I'd love to hear in the chat here, how many people here are actually in a job that, if you went to college, that has to do with your major that you graduated in? Probably not that many. And if some people throw it in, I'll keep an eye on that. But right, it's like you think you got to know what you're doing when you're graduating college, or when you start work, and life has other plans. When
Hmm.
I was locking up drunk drivers and domestic violence calls, if you told me I'd be talking to a UX manager at LinkedIn. LinkedIn didn't even exist back then, but I'd be like, "What?" I was like, "No, it wouldn't. I'm in New Jersey at my little house."
Right.
So yeah, yeah, pretty. Yes, it looks like not my first degree. Studied video production, and now they're doing UX. Right?
Mm.
That's sorry if I mispronounce your name. Kudzai. Yeah, right. Whole different field than what you went
Yep.
through. Right. So yeah, yeah, love it, love it.
Awesome. So look, we're at 2:47. We
Yeah,
got 13 minutes left. We have around 10 questions in the Q&A bank. So why don't we get started?
yeah, yeah, love it.
All right. So from Katie, now that we're working from home, at the lines between work and home are blurred, what recommendations do you have to create separations between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing is to set those expectations with the people that you can at home, and the people at work. I like one thing, we should not be expected to have to answer every minute of every day just because we're at home. So there's this
Mm,
perception that we have when we're in person. It's like, I can walk by your desk, Harrison, and be like, "Oh, I see you. Hey, man, real quick, you got this?
right.
I got a question about this thing, right?" So one of the things I do is like, listen, if you are with your spouse, or you have kids, and you're taking turns watching the kids, like, tell your manager, tell your people, hey, listen, from 12:37 until 1:15 every day, I'm not going to respond to anything because my partner is on a call and I got to take care of the kids during this time, right?
Yeah.
So we need to start setting boundaries with people at work and at home too, on what is reasonable for us to respond to things. That's a really important part.
Yeah, to add on to that, another thing is there's so many, like if you look at your phone, there's so many notifications that are competing for our time. And one of the things that I accidentally did, I went on vacation, turned off my Slack and email notifications. And I think it's been about a year and a half and I've kept them turned off. Because guess what? I will check it when I check it. And, the thing is that when we think about Slack and when we think about our email, they're actually asynchronous forms of communication. So you don't necessarily need to respond to something right away.
Yeah,
So I think that's something to really keep in perspective.
I love it. And for those of you who are managing, I used to do this with my team, and there's some people on this call from that were on my team before. Um, you're not going to get points for how fast you respond,
Yep.
right? So like, if I send you an email at 11 o'clock at night, I tell you, don't respond to me. Like, get
Yeah.
back to it during business hours. If it's something
Yep.
that's important or urgent, I'll text you.
Yep. All right. From is Gresha Meda, tips for new designers looking for jobs. Applying online is a black hole. What are some unconventional yet effective ways to find jobs? Um, Yeah. So again, like I think this is a very unique time. Um, I think it's more than just applying for the job, right? Most companies, if they're hiring, they're going to have they're going to have their website, or they're going to have the job on the website. And I think one of the things to understand too, a recruiter is going to likely be the ones that are fielding those. I think what's going to be most important is just like focusing on your career growth. Remember, I'd mentioned this before, investing in yourself and really doing self-improvement. Seeing that through the work that you're doing on your portfolio, that's what's going to really shine through. Because again, like if we're looking at fewer jobs that are out there, guess what? There's going to be more people applying for those. So what are the things that you have invested in yourself that are going to help you stand out?
Love that. It's great advice.
All right. So how do you handle a boss who says you need to work an 8-hour day? I personally don't think anyone works fully 9 to 5.
Mhm. Yeah. A direct conversation with that manager. I would ask, are we sitting down and designing our alliances with those managers and letting them know our expectations? Because listen, when especially now because we're all at home, if you have kids and a family, and even if you don't, a full like solid 8 hours is not something that's reasonable for anyone to be doing right now. At least not straight through, right? Maybe we
Mm.
spread our 8 hours across 12 hours throughout the whole day. I know some people that start work at 6 a.m. and work till 7, but they take breaks in between, right? So there's got to be time for a break. Again, this kind of goes back to the speed and efficiency and productivity versus
Yeah.
the relationship, right? So I think sitting down and like we need to start scheduling meetings with our managers, and the whole 30 minutes is about us.
Yeah.
Not talking about UX, not talking about building teams. We're talking about me and what's going on in my life and some of the things that I need and things I want to be aligned with. And don't leave the last 5 minutes of your 30-minute meeting with your manager to set expectations for what you need. Like you
Yeah.
deserve to have a full 30 minutes, so take it.
Yeah. And I would say if you guys are not having consistent one-on-ones, you need to make that happen now.
Yeah.
That is going to be your biggest point of, again, bringing your perspective to the table. And again, like you can't negotiate without bringing anything to the table. So just understand that piece, and you need to make sure that you're the one driving those one-on-ones. Like your manager is not responsible for scheduling the one-on-ones with you. You should be driving those. All right. So have those transparent conversations, and you driving those, because again, that also shows your drive as well, and your um, the fact that you want to be more effective in the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Lenore just made a comment. How consistent is biweekly enough? I never let people answer a question with depends, but I'm gonna have to use that now. It depends on what it is your team's working on. If your manager has the time, if you have the time, but I would try to get as many as you can. I love biweekly. Go for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you get that, at least ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for specifically in UX, we already have, um, I just want to, especially with this, we've actually had to, or I've evolved sort of how our team works. And I actually empower our team to say, hey, like, how can we connect more? So for one, in the design realm, we have our weekly critiques, which is where I can provide that feedback. And we have a weekly one-on-one. And then we also have group sort of settings. So there's a lot of opportunities where we can actually have those conversations. They may not necessarily manifest themselves specifically in a one-on-one, but just I think to Brooke's point, since we have those touch points, having our one-on-ones weekly, that's an opportunity for you to just talk about yourself and kind of see where we can go from there.
Yeah.
Um, so the next one from Elena: how can managers get feedback from their reports, especially when the team is small and therefore not anonymous, without putting them on the spot or making them feel like what they said might affect their performance?
Love it, love it. So I am I hate anonymous feedback. When I was at Facebook, when you were giving feedback to people, there's a little checkbox at the bottom. It was like share this with the person or not. And I'm like, why would you not let someone know who said this? And if we build strong relationships with the people that we work with, the people in our personal lives, giving feedback, and if we do it in the right way, if we give the right content and we follow the right framework, it doesn't have to hurt every time. So yeah, I would say, like, as the manager needs to demonstrate. Again, this comes back to vulnerability again, right? As a manager, coming in, sitting down with your team, and doing what I was saying, like, listen, I need to, if I'm better at what I'm doing, it's not only going to help me, but it's also going to help you. It's also going to help the team, and it's going to help the company. And this is what I want. So in order to do that, you got to let me know if something's going on, and like, I'm not going to hold it against you. So can we have the type of relationship where we both can share and give each other feedback in a way that's useful for us? But I think just having that conversation, it sounds like a very simple thing, and it is, but we don't do that. So part of my mission is trying to get people to have better and healthier communication styles with their managers. It's funny, we forget the power that we have as employees. We think that the manager has all the. I got into this huge fight with one of my sergeants in the state police,
Yeah.
and he was not listening to anything I said, and he's like, Brooks, I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's done. Forget it. And I'm like, listen, you have to talk about it. Like, I'm telling you that I want to sit down and have a
Yeah.
meeting with my manager. So, like, we're gonna do it. And that's what happens. We have power as employees, and we have power as managers too. So making sure we're open, we're vulnerable, we're strong, and having these conversations is super important.
Awesome. So we probably have time for one more question. Um, so Lenore, how do you remain professional while also being vulnerable? I feel like it's a slippery slope for me to overshare.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple sides of vulnerability. One side of vulnerability is kind of talking about your feelings, and sharing how you're feeling about situations, sharing how you're thinking about situations, right? The other side of vulnerability is openness.
Hmm.
And we oftentimes don't think of that, right? So how do we be vulnerable in the workplace? Like, we are open to listening to other people's stories, and how they live and how they operate. And we're also vulnerable and strong enough to share ourselves with the people that we work with. And that's what builds the stability and connection, better communication with the people that we're working with. So yeah, I would focus on that. So yeah, so I'm not saying, like, listen, you got to start planning happy hours and inviting the whole company to your house every weekend, right? But we can take some time and out of our meeting space in our day to kind of talk about how we're feeling about work, how we're feeling about things going on in our personal lives. One of my buddies from my old team is on here, and, like, we would start our meetings. I'm like, tell me one thing that happened this weekend that has nothing to do with work, right? And I would start. I was the VP of the team. I would start and model that, right? So yeah, looking for some opportunities to share and be open. So two sides of vulnerability. One, here's the things I'm working on. Here's the things I'm afraid of. Here's the things I'm trying to be better at. Second side of the coin, openness. Here are some things about me. And that's what, at least to me, that's what vulnerability should be about.
Well, Brooks, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up right now. Um, how would folks get in touch with you? Tell them more about your coaching service. Because I think this is a very enlightening conversation. I'm sure they're going to want to tune in more.
Yeah. This is great, man. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining. It was super awesome to have all of you here. You can hit me up on mergingpath.com is my website. The name of the company, Merging Path, is guiding you from the path of where you are to where you want to be. So here's where we are right now. It doesn't matter what happened to us in the past. Here's where we are. Let's take this and come together. So you can hit me up on the website. I'd love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. And yeah, shoot me an email, brooks@mergingpath.com, and looking forward to working with all of you and all of your teams as well.